Hello, my name is Helen and I am the head of digital at Avenue, which is an agency based in London and Kent, and I get £2,000 deducted from my salary every time I fail to mention that we deliver impact from insight. So my boss told me that I need to be giving you a little bit more information about my background to add a bit of credibility to these kinds of presentations. So I'm an SEO by trade. I've worked in digital marketing for over 10 years. I've worked on projects for the likes of Vauxhall, Jaguar Land Rover, Tangle Teezer, Imperial College, and I have grade 2 at ballet. So I'm not entirely sure why he felt that you needed to know these things, or even that they're that impressive, because personally, I feel like my biggest achievement came when I was 10 years old, when I invented the bagless vacuum cleaner. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely James Dyson invented the bagless vacuum cleaner, and you would be correct. He did, in fact, invent it 10 years prior to my birth, but I then later invented it again, which I think is just as noteworthy. Now, I remember the day I ran into the kitchen where my mum was, and I said to her, "Mum, listen, I've got this amazing idea and it's going to make us millions." In hindsight, I was a bit of a weird kid. My mum looked at me with that look in her eyes that only parents get when their kids are being stupid, that mix of embarrassment and pity, and she said, "That already exists. It's the Dyson vacuum cleaner. It's already been invented." And I remember feeling crushed. Because yes, okay, granted, someone else had already invented the thing, and it was considerably earlier than I had invented it, but I too had invented it, and I believe in credit where credit is due. I wanted a little bit of appreciation for my amazing invention, and I was getting none of it. And this long-winded, slightly odd preamble is a bit of an introduction to explain to you why I currently have beef with Google Analytics. You see, Google Analytics is stealing credit. It's taking credit for my amazing organic SEO campaigns and giving it to other channels. And I want credit where credit is due. Now, the subject of my talk is dark traffic, and dark traffic normally refers to direct traffic, so traffic that has been wrongly attributed as direct within programs like Google Analytics. But I am the one with the copious microphone, so I am choosing to extend that definition to mean any traffic that is being wrongly attributed in Google Analytics. So if you will bear with me, in order for us to fully understand how big an issue this is and why I am so angry with Google Analytics at the moment, we need to take a look at what the usual channels are that Google Analytics is attributing traffic to just straight out of the box. So I'm going to run through these just quickly. We start off with organic traffic, also known as natural SEO, the channel of champions, as I like to call it. It's any traffic that is coming through a search engine that hasn't got any sort of paid budget behind it. Then we have paid or cheating. This is where you have traffic coming through something like a search engine, but it has budget behind it. It could be display advertising, that sort of thing. Then we have referral traffic. So this is any traffic that is coming to your website via another website. So Google Analytics is picking up a little bit of data that is sent through the visitor information when it's hitting your website that tells it which website it came from. Now, there's also other channels such as email, social media, affiliates. Google Analytics is essentially taking the information that is passed through when a visitor hits your website and understanding where that person came from before they got to your website. That is how it's classifying the traffic in Google Analytics. There is also this fun other bucket, which is essentially where Google Analytics is admitting that you tried to get it to classify the information correctly, but it doesn't really understand what the hell you're getting at. So it just lumps it into other. If you have an other category showing up in Google Analytics, then you have problems, my friends, and you need to look into that. But really, the source of my current anger is this little fella, direct traffic. Direct traffic is supposed to be when someone comes to your website having not visited anywhere else. So they are coming straight to your website, perhaps because they have clicked on a bookmark, or they have memorized the URL and they've just typed it in directly. Essentially, Google Analytics is not receiving any of that referral data when that visitor hits your website, so it's just assuming direct visit. The issue is direct is a lie most of the time. Now, as I am such a believer in credit where credit is due, I will say this about Google Analytics. It's not psychic. If it's not getting that referral data coming through with the visit, it has no hope. It cannot attribute that information correctly. Now, there are several reasons why direct traffic might be considered direct when in fact it isn't, essentially because that referral information is getting stripped. This could be, for instance, because someone has come to your non-secure website from a secure website, and because it's coming from a secure website, that referral data is just getting stripped. So Google Analytics says, I don't know where this traffic's come from, it must be direct. Or WhatsApp, encrypted social media messaging systems. Now, WhatsApp is amazing because if, for instance, you want to gossip to your sister about your cousin's new boyfriend who you don't really like and is a little bit of a loser, you can do that in the confidence that even if there's a data breach, that information is encrypted and therefore your cousin is never going to find out how much you don't like the guy. However, because it's encrypted, that also means that referral data is stripped if someone clicks on a link in WhatsApp and goes to your website. Google Analytics can't get that referral data, therefore it lumps that traffic in as direct. Then we have non-web documents. Now, I need to pause at this moment and tell you, if you are featuring things like Word documents as a large part of your marketing, dark traffic is not your biggest issue. Now, I'd like to think that you're probably not using the likes of Word in your marketing campaigns, but you might be using PDFs, for instance. So if you have spec sheets or product descriptions that you send out as PDFs, any link that is contained within that PDF document, if someone clicks on it, Google Analytics is not going to be able to tell that it came from a PDF because there's no referral data, therefore it gets lumped into direct. Yes, indeed. Now, what about this little fella, the Google Home app? Now, SEOs for years now have been banging on about how voice search is the next best thing and how we all need to be getting onto that voice search train. My concern is that actually, if you conduct a voice search, say, over your mobile phone, which of course you're all doing all of the time, right? Because it's the next big thing. You're searching on your phone through your voice all the time? No one is. Okay. That's a bit awkward. But how about you're shouting at your Google Home when you're at home and you're asking it a question and it says to you, I'm going to send you a link to this website where you can get more information. If you go into your app and you click on that link, that information is getting counted as direct traffic, which is a little bit concerning because actually if you did a voice search, surely that should be counted as organic traffic, or at the very least paid if it's some kind of sponsored result. But no, it's coming through as direct. Okay, so these are a few cases where that traffic might be getting misattributed, but actually how big a deal is it? Well, in a slightly early morning, caffeine-fueled, really unscientific experiment I conducted on a client's website, I noticed that in a month there was roughly exactly 34,153 visits to a URL that was longer than just one folder deep. So essentially, people were going to a web page that was actually quite a long URL, and that was getting counted as direct traffic. So what this is telling me is that people either have a lot of these URLs bookmarked. Now, given the URLs were not particularly interesting pages, they weren't top-level landing pages, I would be surprised if they were bookmarked, or they have got a photographic memory, and they're able to remember these really long URLs off by heart. But actually, that is quite a high percentage of people who are getting counted as direct, but are actually landing on a page that you wouldn't think was a direct visit. Now, when I was conducting these really unscientific experiments, I also started using the Google search bar on my mobile phone. I use an Android phone. If you're an iPhone user, I don't believe you have the benefit of this little thing that sits here, but we, as Android users, do. And I was using this and noticing that my traffic, whenever I was searching on this, was getting counted as direct, which is a concern, because actually that is a Google search bar, which to me, as an SEO, makes me think it should be counted as organic traffic, not direct traffic. So I was sitting there early morning, getting quite excited about this amazing discovery, and I was yelling out to my team members, "I found something amazing, you have to come and look what I've discovered." And they all kind of thought, she's shouting again, why does she do this so often? But eventually they came around to have a look at my screen. I was showing them Google Analytics, and I was showing them how I was conducting a search on my mobile, and humiliatingly, it was getting counted as organic traffic. Which was weird, because I was absolutely sure I had seen this. It's working. Videos never work in presentations. I was noticing that when I was conducting a search using my Android phone, looking for my own web page on our own website, because I'm that vain, it was actually getting counted as direct. But when I was showing my colleagues, it was getting counted as organic. And this really confused me. Either I was going crazy, and I did need to video record it so that I could prove to myself that I wasn't going crazy, or something else was happening. This is just a slide, because videos never work in presentations, it's my backup. But moving on, what I did notice in the excitement and the shouting that I was doing, every time a colleague came around to look at my screen, I actually picked up a different phone. So on my work phone, the traffic was getting counted as a direct visit, despite the fact I was using that Google search bar. But when I was using my personal phone, it was getting counted as organic. I need to stop just a moment and point out this terrible bit of damage that was done to the phone. That was not me. Do not think badly of me. I have never broken a phone. That was someone else. Now, the reason this is really important is because, think of it, how many people are using their Android phones to conduct searches every day? How many people are using that little search bar to conduct a search every day? And some of those searches are actually getting counted as direct rather than an organic visit. And that is a big problem, because as an SEO, I want to make sure that if my web page is ranking, that actually it's me that's getting the credit for that, not direct. So I need your help. Essentially, we have now run out of Android phones in the office, so I can't keep doing this testing. But what I want to know is actually what portion of these phones are actually counting as direct rather than organic, because our early indications are that there are certain models, certain versions of the app that in combination are meaning that traffic that should be counted as organic is getting counted as direct instead. So here's a lovely URL for you. It's very long. It's not actually the correct URL. I discovered that yesterday. We had to put a redirect in because I'd put the wrong one on the presentation. If you type this in, hopefully you will get to the correct page where you can submit your own findings. So if you have an Android phone and you have access to Google Analytics, which I hope you all have, you can conduct a little search for me. Try searching for something on a website that you have access to GA with, and look to see whether that traffic from your Android phone is getting counted as organic or direct. And then let me know, because this is quite interesting, and this is something I think that not all of us are aware is happening at the moment, this particular level of misattribution in Google Analytics. And as I've said before, I'm not a fan of when credit gets given to someone else. I like to credit hog. So credit going to the wrong channel is not a good thing. It's not a good thing for any of us, because at the end of the day, we are reporting on this data. Good luck explaining that to your boss. If you spent lots of money on an SEO campaign and you've not actually seen any year-on-year growth, but in the meantime, direct traffic is growing, that's quite a hard conversation to have, and you might not actually know why that's happening. And it could be any of the reasons that I've talked to you about just now. So this is bad news, and I don't want to make things worse, but actually, it gets worse. So it's not only direct traffic that is probably wrong in Google Analytics, but also your referral data is probably wrong in Google Analytics. So guys, we need to be scared. We need to be very scared. The reports we are giving to our bosses, to our clients, are actually a pile of rubbish. If you would look in your Google Analytics account and have a look at the list of referral sources, you might see something that looks a little bit like this. Now, anyone who's responsible for social media in the room is probably going to get a little bit angry at this moment in time, because actually, a lot of social media traffic gets counted as referral traffic straight out of the box in Google Analytics. Now, you are probably familiar with Facebook and Twitter getting counted as social media, but some of their alternate websites, like their mobile sites, for instance, don't always get counted in that social media bucket straight out of the box. It gets counted as referral. So if you have a look in your referral data in Google Analytics, you might see a list of URLs that look a little bit familiar and look a little bit out of place. It gets worse. So as an SEO, I'm obviously very hot on all of the different types of search engines there are out there. There are others than Google and Bing. But what I noticed that a lot of these search engines were actually getting counted as referral traffic rather than organic traffic. In fact, this is a list that I pulled from one of my clients. That's a lot of websites, actually, that should be getting counted as organic traffic that visitors through are getting counted as referral traffic, which is no good. So having had a look at one of my clients, I wanted to see actually what proportion of this traffic is getting misattributed as referral when it should be going to somewhere else. It's quite a lot, actually. The very unscientific experiment that I did showed that about 17% of traffic that was getting counted as referral traffic should be getting counted as email or organic or paid or social. Now think how big some of your websites are. 17% is actually a lot of visitors. That's a lot of credit going to the wrong channel. Okay, so we've seen that direct traffic is probably not always direct, and we've seen that referral traffic isn't always referral and could well be organic or paid or another channel. Exactly how bad is this? Well, through my unscientific studies and looking at this one particular client over a period of 1 month, I noticed that of their 288,000 visits, just shy of 36,000 of those visits were getting misattributed. That's almost 12.5% of all of their traffic to their site in a month getting classified as the wrong channel. Bad news, really bad news, and you should be scared. So what can we do about this? I think really we have 3 options of how to solve this problem. We're going to take option 3, some kind of magic. So this is your crash course in Google Analytics magic. Now, I need to tell you at this point in time, there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff coming up on the screen, but I've made it really, really small, so your camera phones are not going to be able to record it. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to follow me on Twitter, and I'm going to tweet out the slides later on. Smooth, right? So this here is a really good way of properly attributing search engines as organic traffic if Google Analytics isn't picking them up as organic straight out of the box. So we're talking about things like the various versions of MSN searches or the likes of Ecosia, who are quite a new search engine that not everyone's heard of but are growing. This is an example, which you can't see because I've made it really small, of Duckduckgo. Duckduckgo traffic was, for the longest time, not being counted as organic traffic straight out of the box. And the only thing we could do is use this organic search reattribution facility within Google Analytics to get it into the right place. And yet, for the longest time, it wasn't working for Duckduckgo. So Google's own solution for making sure that a search engine was properly getting tracked in Google Analytics wasn't actually working. It's fixed now for Duckduckgo, but for other search engines, it might not be working still. Which is why we look at these filters. Again, really, really small. You're going to have to follow me on Twitter, tweeting out the slides later. Filters are really good. They can do a whole host of things in Google Analytics. They can make sure that your traffic gets properly attributed, which is what we want. The one thing you need to remember, though, is that filters are permanent. So if you start filtering data, from that point onwards, that data will change. So it makes it really hard for you to conduct those kind of year-on-year comparisons. So what you really need to ask yourself is, do you want that data to change permanently from now on? The question I really need to ask myself is, have I been making coffee wrong this entire time? Because that, to me, looks like milk. Do you put the milk in the cafetiere? I'm pretty sure that's not right, but what do I know? Something else that you need to remember about filters is that sentence case matters. This, my friends, is a cat and a lowercase cat. And they are here to remind you of exactly that. If you use a capital O for organic in your filters in some places and a lowercase o for organic in other places, you're going to end up with 2 channels called organic. Google Analytics won't merge them, it will split them out. You're going to end up with even more problems with your Google Analytics data. Avocados. Moving on. So, if you also want to make sure that you are properly tagging up your information in Google Analytics and you're getting rid of that stupid other channel that sits in GA, you probably want to be using URLs with UTM codes on them. You're probably quite familiar with them, but if you're not, then this is Google's own UTM builder, and this will help you get the right code to put on the end of your URL so that you can make sure that any traffic that has lost its referral source for some reason has that your referral source put back in, and it's the referral source that you are actually stating you want it to be. Use your UTM codes anywhere on the internet where you have access to control the URL. You can tag up all sorts of things. If you want to know exactly where that data is coming from, then UTM codes are your friend. However, for the sake of every analyst that you will ever encounter, please, for the love of all that is good, do not use UTM codes on your own website, because by doing that, you just start corrupting all of the data in Google Analytics and people cry. So please do not do that. You may be aware that it used to be the case that Google My Business listings, although they appeared when someone conducted a search, and although they were not paid for, therefore I would count them as organic traffic if someone went to your website from them, they used to be counted as direct. It was another one of those sources of traffic that Google Analytics just lumped into direct. Now, through my early morning investigations, I noted that actually traffic now, when it comes through Google My Business, is getting classified as organic straight out of the box. Now, again, I thought this was quite an interesting discovery, so I tweeted Google Analytics to ask them whether I had, in fact, got something right. And this was their reply. They did not reply, which I think is yet more evidence that Google Analytics and I have beef. Everything I've told you today is a way of making sure that your traffic is getting properly classified in Google Analytics. What you need to do is whenever you start using any of these methods is actually make sure that you mark it up in your Google Analytics account, so that when you come back to look at your data in a few months' time and you notice there's been a sudden spike or a sudden drop, you can remind yourself that it's because you've actually been altering the data in Google Analytics. Because you want to be able to tell your boss, that spike there, that was because I did X, Y, and Z, not because of something that's happened with someone else's channel, for instance. You also have to remember that your data is not going to compare with previous months, for instance. So if you are looking at this year's data and you've implemented a filter, then last year's data is not going to be comparable anymore. Now, I have run through a lot of things this morning that are a little bit scary, a little bit worrisome. I've given you a lot to think about, and I've given you the impetus to follow me on Twitter, so I'll send you the slides. Because we're all a little bit stressed at the end of this talk, I just wanted to throw in a little party pineapple. So this is my parting gift to you, so that you can see that there is still good in the world, and that Google Analytics is not going to be the ruin of us all. Now, if you did, I don't know, for instance, want to follow me on Twitter, then here are the details. I am going to be hanging around at the end of the session, so if you want to talk to me any more about upper and lowercase cats, how I did my ballet grade 2, or I don't know, something to do with Google Analytics, then I'll be just down here and you can come and speak to me. Thank you all very much for your time.